Good morning. Kate here, bringing you this week's Monday Mission. And this one's sort of an extension on a topic we've already talked about a little bit. So, a few missions ago, we did one about connection before correction. So, connecting with ourselves before we correct or beat ourselves up, right? Or try to shame ourselves or punish ourselves into changing. And same with other people, right? We need to actually connect with them and understand maybe where they're coming from before we move into correction or try to change that behavior. And that idea came from the lens of special education. So that came from my work as a school psychologist and working with students that receive special education services in school. And from that little lesson, I actually ended up doing a whole week of posts on Instagram about lessons learned from special education. And so it actually got a lot of great feedback. People were really interested in that and felt like they related to it. So I thought I would do a lessons learned from special education part 2. So that's what this one is about. And they came up with 3 more terms and things that we sort of do in the realm of special education that truly applies to everyone, applies to us, even as grown-ups. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So the first one is this idea of presumed competence. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever heard that term if you're not in education, but this idea of presumed competence is that we assume that a person has the ability to think, learn, and understand. And the goal of presumed competence when working in the field of special education is that we want to be able to write appropriate goals for students, right? And we don't want to limit what we think they can or can't do, right? We don't want to assume that they're not capable of doing something just because they have a disability, which is a different ability, right? A different way of learning. So, this might be that we have a student that maybe really has a lower cognitive ability, right? And we don't want to assume or presume that they're not able to do certain things because of their cognitive ability. So it's this idea of presumed competence so that we don't limit their progress, okay? And, we don't think to ourselves, oh, well, they just couldn't possibly do grade level work because, of this different ability that they have. So it pushes us to kind of assume that they're capable of learning and thinking and doing, right? So I thought this could work for us in 2 ways or be applied in 2 different ways for us. The first way is presuming that everyone is trying their best with what they know. Okay. Um, yes, even your mother-in-law, even that person at work, even that person that drives under the speed limit in the left lane, right? Even the people that trigger you the most. Okay. If we assume that everyone is just doing the best with what they know, right? We would have a lot more understanding, right? And I think we would come at it from a different place in our interactions with someone, right? So if we have someone that, let's say, strongly disagrees with our point of view, if we can understand that that person came to their point of view based on a map, okay, so I've mentioned several times that each of us has our map. It's how we got to the person that we are. It's our background, the messaging that we received, how we interpreted those messages, and everybody's map is different, right? So if we can assume that that person's map is just different than ours, not worse, not better, right? It's just different, then we would approach interactions and conversations from a much more open place. Okay, so that's one way that we can presume competence for ourselves, from that field of special education and apply it to our own lives, is presuming that everyone is doing their best with what they know. Okay, and yes, they may not know as much as maybe you do about a certain area, or you think that they don't, right? But they are coming to their conclusions, they're coming to their opinions, their viewpoints, their actions are coming from their own place of trying to do their best with what they have. Okay. The second way is that we can apply that concept to ourselves, right? We can presume that we are capable of reaching whatever goal we have. Okay, just like we would do for our students, we want to presume that that we're capable, right? So I'm capable of running a 5K. Okay, I'm capable of finding love. I'm capable of not yelling at my kids. I'm capable of managing my anxiety. I'm, worthy. I'm worthy. That's a big one, right? So if we can just presume that, right, then we can come from a place of curiosity. Well, if I'm capable of running a 5K, I'm curious how I could start. Or if I'm totally capable of not yelling at my kids as much, where could I start, right? We can come from a place of curiosity, whereas if we're coming from a place is assuming that we can't do those things, then we're coming from a place of judgment. Nothing good ever comes from a place of judgment. Okay, so that's the second part of presumed competence. All right, second concept I wanted to talk about is in special education, I will often talk about meeting the student where they are, right? So, especially in regards to behavior. So we may have a kiddo that doesn't follow the classroom rules, right? Is maybe an older student and just doesn't follow what we may kind of think are typical social norms, right? And there's a lot of frustration when that happens. Well, so and so just won't follow the rules. They won't do what all the other kids are doing, right? And I'll often say, right, I know that they won't, and that can be frustrating, but we have to meet them where they are. They're here, right? I know we want them to be up here, and we think that they just should be up here, right? But they're here, so we got to meet them where they're at. Same way that we can apply that to, or the way that we can apply that to our lives is meeting other people and ourselves where we are at, okay? So you may want your husband to plan date nights, but he doesn't, okay? That's where he's at, right? You may want your kids to help more, but they're not. Okay, it just is what it is, right? We're gonna meet them where they're at. You may want your sister to consider what you want to do for the holidays instead of just whatever she and her family want to do, but she doesn't. Okay, so because we don't meet them where they're at, right? We waste a ton of energy and time and have all this frustration over them not being where we want them to be. Them not being here, but they're down here. Okay? So there's a ton of energy and time and frustration that is spent over people not being where we think that they should be. When what we really could do is just meet them where they're at and then go from there and then come at it again from a place of curiosity, right? Because then we have a choice. If we meet them where they're at and we say, well, my sister, she's not going to consider what I want to do for the holidays, right? Meet them where they're at. Okay, now we can come from a place of choice. Do I accept that? And just that's who my sister is, and I'm fine. It's really okay if we do what her family wants to do, okay? Or do I want to set a boundary, have a conversation? You have choices then. But if you just spend all your time in that place of frustration that she doesn't consider what your family wants to do, nothing productive comes from that place, okay? So that's the idea of meeting them where they are and even meeting yourself where you are, right? And then the last idea I wanted to mention is something called a short-term objective. Okay, so when we have students that need special education services, they have what's called an IEP, an individualized education program, which has individual goals based on their needs. Okay, and sometimes we write short-term objectives for those goals. So those goals are written for a year, right? So they're written so that by the end of the year, that goal will be mastered, hopefully, ideally, right? And a lot of times we will write something that's called a short-term objective. Okay, so let's just say that we want a student to be able to count to 100 by the end of the year. Okay, like that's their bigger goal. Okay, the short-term objective might be count to 10, count to 30, count to 50. We would break it down and we would measure those short-term objectives. Are they on track to meet this short-term objective, or do we need to change up what we're doing, right? Are we on track to meet all the short-term objectives that will then lead up to the overall big objective, the goal, okay? So how you might do this is if you're going to run a 5K, okay, if you want to run a 5K, first of all, we're going to think that we're capable of doing it, right? We're going to presume competence. You're going to meet yourself where you are, right? So if you're not doing anything, you're not going to expect yourself to run 5 miles in 2 weeks and then beat yourself up because you didn't do it, right? Okay, so you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to presume competence, you're going to meet yourself where you're at, and then you're going to set a short-term objective, which might be just walking twice a week. I'm going to commit to walking twice a week, and I'm going to build that up to my goal of running a 5K. Or let's go back to the date night example, right? Your goal, what you want, is for your husband to plan date nights, but you're going to meet him where he's at. He's not planning them right now. So you can spend all kinds of frustration and time and energy wasted ruminating over the fact that he doesn't plan date nights, or you can plan a date night. Okay, maybe that's a short-term objective that you plan it at first, okay? Because the big goal is that you have shared time and connection together, right? Is your big goal that he physically plans the date night? Maybe it is. But then look at what your short-term objectives need to be in order to get there. Let's say that you want your kids to help more, right? And now they're not helping, they're not really doing much around the house, okay? Again, meet them where they're at. Presume competence, they're capable of taking on chores and responsibilities around the house. So you start with just one chore that is their chore, right? Like the boys, Parker does garbage every Sunday night and Brooks does recycling, right? And then here and there throughout the week, they'll do what's asked, but those are their chores. So start with one, that short-term objective, right? Because you want to think about what the bigger goal is. And then let's go back to the sister not acknowledging what you want to do for the holidays. If you look at that example, first of all, have you told your sister that you don't feel like your opinion or what you want to do for the holidays is considered? If you've not even had that consideration, then how can you expect her to know that or to change anything to change, right? If you've not even had that conversation. So maybe your short-term objective is just that you're going to suggest what you want to do for the holidays or have a conversation and see if there's willingness there to consider what you want to do for the holiday, right? And change it up. So again, these are things that are really in that world of special education, but could really be applied to all of our lives, and we could learn from them. So presumed competence, meeting them where they're at, and setting short-term objectives are 3 big lessons to learn from this video. And so those are our missions, that we're going to presume competence of others and ourselves. We're going to meet other people where they're at. Stop wasting all that time ruminating over the fact that they're not where we want them to be. We're just going to accept the fact that they're not. And then that gives us choices. And we're going to set short-term objectives so that we set ourselves up to be successful for the overall big goal. Okay, so that's your mission should you choose to accept it. Our journal prompt for this week is I am capable of, and then fill in the sentence. Okay, so whatever you are thinking about doing, whether it's starting a business, whether it's starting a workout routine, whatever you want to do, finish that sentence. I am capable of, and fill in there, okay? And then I want you to, an extra challenge is to write a short-term objective for yourself, right? So whatever that goal is that you want to presume that you're capable of doing, I am capable of, okay? Write a short-term objective for yourself. What's one thing that you can start doing that will get you towards that goal that you can do daily? And it's short and small that you can start doing it now to meet yourself where you're at. Okay, so that's your mission should you choose to accept it. As always, share with me what comes up for you this week, and we'll talk soon.